updates regarding the operation of the International Space Station. Thank you to those of you for joining us here in person today, and the many of you online. I'm Bethany Stevens, NASA's press secretary, and your moderator today. Our participants in today's briefing include Administrator Jared Isaacman, Associate Administrator Amit Kshatriya, and Chief Health and Medical Officer Dr. J.D. Polk. Each of the participants will provide opening remarks and updates prior to shifting to Q&A. With that, I'll give the floor to Administrator Isaacman.
All right. Thank you, Bethany, and thank you for everyone being here on short notice. So for over 60 years, NASA has set the standard for safety and security in crewed space flight. In these endeavors, including the 25 years of continuous human presence on board the International Space Station, the health and the well-being of our astronauts is always and will be our highest priority. Yesterday, January 7th, a single crew member on board the station experienced a medical situation and is now stable. After discussions with Chief Health and Medical Officer Dr. J.D. Polk and leadership across the agency, I've come to the decision that it's in the best interest of our astronauts to return Crew 11 ahead of their planned departure. Within the coming days, the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft will depart the International Space Station with Commander Zena Cardman, pilot Mike Fink, Kimya Yui from JAXA, and Oleg Platonov of Roscosmos, and safely return them to Earth. We expect to provide a further update within the next 48 hours as to the anticipated undock and reentry timeline. Over the last 5 months, Crew 11 contributed to the ongoing operations of the space station, conducted extensive scientific research, completed the majority of their mission objectives, and upheld the standards of professionalism for which astronauts are known. Crew 12 is currently scheduled to launch as soon as mid-February. Alongside our international and commercial partners, NASA is evaluating their timeline to include earlier launch opportunities. We will provide more information when it's available. In the meantime, NASA astronaut Chris Williams, having launched to the station on November 27th on Soyuz MS-28, maintains our American presence in space and will support the space station's operations and scientific efforts. NASA astronauts and our teams in mission control and our professionals who train for every possible scenario at every step of the mission, including moments just like this. I'm proud of the swift effort across the agency thus far to ensure the safety of our astronauts, and I know NASA and our commercial partners will successfully bring Crew 11 safely home. And with that, I'll turn it over to Associate Administrator Amit Kshatriya.
Good evening. Thank you, sir. I'll be brief. We'll get to Dr. Polk as soon as we can, but I'll just add a few comments. In every discussion over the last 24 hours as we've assessed the situation, crew safety has always remained our highest priority, and as it always is across the agency. We never take shortcuts. We never compromise when it comes to protecting our astronauts. The work accomplished during this period reflects the precision and professionalism of the flight control teams on the ground and the astronauts aboard ISS. Our crews are extensively trained, as the administrator mentioned, to manage unexpected medical situations and other off-nominal events, including onboard training, which we conduct regularly for these situations. Yesterday was a textbook example of that training in action. Once the situation on the station stabilized, careful deliberations led us to the decision to return Crew 11, as the administrator mentioned, while ensuring minimal operational impact to ongoing work aboard ISS. Operating ISS is a complicated task and has been for the past 25 years with crews on board. The safe operation of the station and the protection of the crew, who are the stewards of station operations, is the hallmark of flight operations and what we are reminded of every day of the unforgiving nature of human space flight. With that, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Polk.
Thanks, Amit. First, probably goes without saying, but I'll still reiterate as a physician that I'm not going to speak about any particular astronaut or any particular specific diagnoses. I'd ask that we still respect the privacy of the astronaut. As Administrator mentioned earlier, the astronaut is absolutely stable, so I have to reiterate that again. But anytime we have a medical incident, we embark on looking at diagnoses and what we would call a workup to get a differential diagnosis on what's happening with that patient or astronaut on board. And as many of you know, we have a very robust suite of medical hardware on board the International Space Station, but we don't have the complete amount of hardware that I would have in the emergency department, for example, to complete a workup of a patient. And in this particular incident, that the medical incident was sufficient enough that we were concerned about the astronaut, that we would like to complete that workup. And the best way to complete that workup is on the ground, where we have the full suite of medical testing hardware. Now, again, because the astronaut is absolutely stable, this is not an emergent evacuation. We're not immediately disembarking and getting the astronaut down. But it leaves that lingering risk and lingering question as to what that diagnosis is, and that means there's some lingering risk for that astronaut on board. And so always we err on the side of the astronaut's health and welfare, and in this particular case, we are doing the same. And I should reiterate, in our 25-year history of the International Space Station, we've had many models and Monte Carlo analysis models that have said we should have had a medical evacuation approximately every 3 years in that 25-year history, and we've not had one to date. And even in this case, we're erring on the side of caution. Again, it's not an emergent evacuation, but we are erring on the side of caution for the crew member and in their best interest and in their best medical welfare. And with that, I think we'll take questions. Is that it, Bethany? Okay.
So with that, we will open the floor to questions. So if there's anybody here in the room who would like to ask any questions, we'll open it to y'all first. And if not, I will turn this over to the operator to go to the phone bridge. And we'll go with Kristen Fisher with Endless Void Media. There's a microphone right behind you. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for holding this briefing. My question is for really whoever wants to take it. I understand you guys can't speak to the specific nature of this astronaut's medical condition, but I'm curious if you all can shed some light on the hours before a spacewalk takes place and the strain that that can put on an astronaut's body. And can you say if that at all contributed to the medical condition that this astronaut suffered? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. This actually had nothing to do with the operational environment in preparing for a spacewalk at all. This was totally unrelated to any operations on board. And of course, we do a huge amount of testing for astronauts before they go to orbit. And they're used to those operational environments. They practice the spacewalk and the pre-breathe many, many, many times. But this was not related to the operations or the spacewalk at all.
Thank you.
And with that, we will go to the phone bridge online.
Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1. Unmute your phone and record your name clearly. If you need to withdraw your question, press star 2. Again, to ask a question, please press star 1. Our first question is from Bill Harwood from CBS News. Go ahead. Your line is open.
Thank you very much. Bill Harwood, CBS News. This is either for the administrator or Amit. Can you move up Crew 12, bring Crew 11 down, and still take care of Artemis 2 in February as currently planned, or would you need some separation between those missions, and might that mean a slip to March for Artemis 2? Thanks.
So the question was, if we pull up the timeline on Crew 12, will that have the potential to interfere with our Artemis 2 preparations? These would be totally separate campaigns at this point. We would, as we mentioned before, we're still evaluating what earlier dates would be achievable, if any, for Crew 12. So right now, we're going to look at all of our standard process to prepare for Crew 12 and look for opportunities if we can bring it in while simultaneously conducting our Artemis 2 campaign. There's no reason to believe at this point in time that there'd be any overlap that we'd have to deconflict for.
next question is from Joey Roulette from Reuters. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hey, thanks. Question for anyone who can answer it. Can you say if this medical issue is related to an injury that was sustained on the space station? I know we said it wasn't related to any operational environment or operational issues, but was it an injury versus some other type of medical issue? And then also, is there anything you have to do regulatorily with Crew Dragon in order to get it to come home early? Like, do you have to work with the FAA for some kind of emergency situation? Thanks.
So perhaps I can just hit the second part of that question, and then Doctor, if you want to address the first part. I mean, first of all, this is not an emergency deorbit. We retain the capability to bring astronauts home in a matter of hours if necessary. So this is recognizing, first of all, we're always going to do the right thing for our astronauts, but it's recognizing it's the end of the Crew 11 mission right now. They've achieved almost all of their mission objectives. Crew 12 is going to launch in a matter of weeks anyway. This is an opportune time when the vehicle is ready, when weather supports, to bring our crew home. So that's how it's looking. That's why we're going to get back to you in the next couple days as to what that timeline looks like. But it is not an emergency deorbit, even though we always retain that capability, and NASA and our partners train for that potential routinely. And then if you want to address the first part of the question.
Yeah, once again, this is not an operational issue. This is not an injury that occurred in the pursuit of operations, if that was the question. But unrelated to the operational environment that we have right now. It's mostly having a medical issue in the difficult areas of microgravity, and with the suite of hardware that we have at our avail to complete a diagnosis.
And now we'll move to Stephanie Chin of NHQ.
Yeah, hello, thank you. So two general questions. Would you consider any part of this operation, like especially like unusual, or are there any like special actions that you are able to maybe elaborate on a little bit more? And in a related sense, there's going to be like the Crew Dragon will be absent for a while, and could you maybe also elaborate on like how the remaining crew members will be dealing with this, and how how the return will look like?
I'm so sorry. The first part of your question, is it unusual? I'm sorry.
Yeah, like is this like especially uncommon, or like? Well,
as Dr. Polk mentioned, it's the first time we've done a controlled medical evacuation from the vehicle, so that is unusual. However, the procedures we're using to prepare for that are nominal procedures, because again, what's important to us is the whole crew, and we don't want to do anything, given the nature of the condition, that we put any other additional risk on the crew by diverging from our normal processes. So that's why we're doing essentially a controlled and expedited return. So no, from that standpoint, but from the standpoint that we have to do it in general, yes, it is unusual. But your second part?
Oh, the Crew Dragon will be temporarily absent, obviously.
That's right.
And how will the remaining crew members be kind of dealing with this situation?
Yeah, it's a good question. First of all, this is one of the reasons why we fly mixed crews on Soyuz and U.S. vehicles, because we want to make sure we have operators for both segments, Russian and U.S. segments, and can perform all the nominal maintenance and other capabilities on the vehicle. There are a handful of exceptions in this particular case. In the history of ISS, we've had different crew complements. We flew with 3 crew for many years during assembly, and also during certain anomalous events. So that in and of itself is not unusual. There is, a slightly elevated risk from the standpoint of we will not be conducting nominal or contingency U.S. EVAs, because right now we have a single U.S. crew member on board, and that carries with it, slightly elevated risk of our ability to respond in some cases, but that traded against, with Crew 12 being prepared for launch and our ability to potentially exercise acceleration options as well as the other contingency procedures we can execute, and we believe that risk trades favorably in order to make sure we get into this safe configuration.
Thank you so much.
And now I'll hand it back over to the operator to tend to those who are joining us virtually via the phone bridge.
Thank you. Our next question is from Lauren Grouch from Bloomberg. Go ahead, your line is open.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. This is for anyone who wants to answer. I'm just curious, will any extra precautions need to be taken to make sure the specific crew member affected will be comfortable and safe during their return to Earth? And are any special precautions being made on board right now in light of this medical issue to make sure that they are safe and healthy? Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. That's a great question. We actually plan for and work towards contingencies with every landing. So there's always emergency equipment. There are always preparations made to make sure all the crew members are in good shape and comfortable. There is no deviation from that or special plan, if you will, that we have to do with this crew member. Again, they are absolutely stable. But we prepare for anomalies or medical issues on every landing. Space flight is a dynamic environment, and certainly splashing down in the ocean is, as Administrator Isaacman knows firsthand. So we always prepare for those environments. We always have a suite of medical equipment and flight surgeons on board the ship, and contingency hospitals ready to go on every landing. So this is no different in that respect.
Our next question is from Jonathan Siri from Fox News. Go ahead, your line is open.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. This is a forward-looking question for Jared Isaacman. As NASA looks ahead to establishing a permanent presence on the moon and long-duration missions to Mars, what in-space medical capabilities would you like to have in place to support crew members?
Well, I appreciate the question. I mean, this is what we've been honing our skills on for the last 25 years. So every spacecraft, whether it's Dragon or Starliner or Orion, is equipped with medical kits to treat what we think are the most common medical developments that will happen as a result of being in the microgravity environment. The International Space Station is far more equipped. It has extensive capabilities, which is why we've done such a fantastic job over the last 25 years of caring for our crew members as they've maintained a continuous presence on orbit. So we are doing all of this to continue to learn. We will absolutely learn from this situation as well to see if that informs our future on-orbit operations, whether that be in the space station or our future lunar base that we are pursuing right now, and eventually for deep space missions to Mars. This is why the International Space Station is such a fantastic on-orbiting laboratory for this, for this type of a learning environment.
Our next question from Denise Chow from NBC News. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Just for whoever is able to answer it, I was just wondering if someone could provide any kind of insight into how the entire crew is feeling. I understand astronauts are trained for all sorts of contingencies, but given that this is quite rare and unusual, I'm just wondering how the disposition of the crew members. Thank you.
I think we can all probably weigh in because we've all been having communication with the flight controllers, and I've spoken to crew members as well quite recently. This is exactly what our astronauts train and prepare for. So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, everybody did exactly as they had prepared for in a situation like this. They're all trained professionals. We're keeping them very well informed, but I would say that in light of the situation, everyone is performing as we would have expected.
We can continue online with the phone bridge.
Our next question is from Eileen Klautz from Aviation Week in Space Technology. Go ahead, your line is open.
Thanks very much. It's Irene Klautz. Are you planning any changes in the splashdown convoy and any changes also in just the deorbit and splash procedures? Would you be activating any additional sites to avoid weather delays or anything else you might be thinking of at this point? Thanks.
Irene, I think my understanding of the situation right now, we are planning for what would, other than the fact that we have pulled forward the timeline, a completely nominal deorbit. So we would still be targeting the same approved splashdown locations. We already prearrange various medical facilities as a standard, as part of our standard operating procedure, as the doctor explained previously. So we always retain the capability for an emergency deorbit, and I think that does speak to the situation and our confidence of how we're managing the situation. Is this is not an emergency deorbit where we would consider other than our pre-planned sites. So right now, we're looking for the correct opportunity to use our existing landing sites, our existing recovery vessels alongside our partner.
Our next question is from Will Robinson Smith from Space Flight Now. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Question to either the administrator or assistant administrator. Given that there will be a gap between when Crew 11 departs and when Crew 12 is able to get there, can you talk about weighing the risk of just having one U.S. crew member on board station in the event of an additional, or in the event of an emergency? I realize this is not an emergent event that's causing Crew 11 to return, but were there to be an emergency on station, if there's just a Soyuz, how do you handle that? Thanks.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, having a single Soyuz on board ISS is a config we're very familiar with. As I mentioned earlier, we flew space station that way for many, many years. We always protect for, in the event of a subsequent failure on the vehicle, that we would be able to bring that crew home safely, and the vehicle is very autonomous and robust and can be configured in a way to support uncrewed operations as needed. So from that standpoint, that additional risk compared to how we've flown in the past is well understood. We generally do, and we like to have U.S. EVA capability at the ready to respond to additional failures, and in those particular cases, we would have a delayed response to one of those significant failures if we had them on board. That, of course, the vehicle is very fault tolerant, so not only we would have to have a major subsequent failure, but then a failure after that before we had a real contingency on board ISS, which is why, as we evaluated the situation, we decided it made a lot more sense to protect for a situation that we knew was something we needed to deal with, rather than something of a likelihood that we deemed lower than normal. And also the crew on board, both Russian and American, are well trained to operate in the environment that they're in and can operate the nominal systems, the nominal research per the plan until their crewmates arrive on Crew 12.
Next question is from Anthony Leon from Spectrum News. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hello, Leone. Thank you so much, all three, for taking the time to speak with us today. My question is, I guess, for Mr. Isaacman. Going forward, will NASA consider having an actual medical officer, MD, on board the ISS and future space missions? And this is for Dr. Polk. How's the crew equipped to dealing with medical issues that were to come up in this situation? Can you sort of explain how they were able to help this astronaut who had this medical issue? Thank you.
So, to just address from my portion in this, all of our astronauts go through extensive medical training. There is, as I described before, a lot of capabilities on the International Space Station that our astronauts interact with routinely, whether it's part of their science and research obligations or just training simulations for these type of contingencies. I don't think if one of our astronauts on board was a medical doctor, it would have changed anything as it relates to our decision process on this. I think that speaks to their level of training. Also, our teams on the ground. We have flight surgeons, and not to mention numerous other surgeons and doctors that are available to weigh in on these type of situations. So, I think simply put, if you have enough people in a challenging environment of microgravity for now approaching, exceeding a quarter of a century, certain situations will develop that almost regardless of the on-orbit capabilities, you're gonna take the correct action to bring them home. And I think that's worth reinforcing too, that we are exercising the capabilities that were designed into the International Space Station at will right now. So we can bring our crew home early in a safe way, not in an emergency, to its nominal landing site because they largely completed their mission objectives. We can evaluate Crew 12, which is weeks away, potentially pull them forward, and do so and operate the station in its intended environment. We have an American astronaut on board. It's why they fly on Soyuz. It's why we fly Roscosmos astronauts on our vehicle. And as Amit pointed out before, this is also an environment that we operated the space station on for many, many years prior to our current Crew Dragon capabilities. And I don't know if you want to add anything else on that, Doctor. Okay.
And before we leap back to the phone bridge, I have a question from Laura Kolodny of CNBC, who's having a bit of trouble accessing it. She asks, ISS is operating in a roughly neutral power mode at the moment, and the upgrade was to get power positive. What will happen now with regards to the solar array?
Not sure about the neutral power mode. Space station, the intent of the EVA that was coming was to augment the 2-alpha solar array with a great new technology, the rollout solar arrays, which we added to the vehicle in order to configure the vehicle for future expansion for commercial activity. So the baseline power configuration of the station is well above the expected margins that we needed to. This EVA was not a contingency that was planned. It was a nominal augmentation of the power system, which we've done on 5 of the other arrays. And that rollout array that was going to be installed is really an amazing piece of hardware. We've used Space Station, as the administrator said, as an incredible test bed for exploration, as well as to help stimulate commercial space activity. And that array design is something we've used. Many other companies have used that exact array design. And so we're continuing the suite of the upgrades we had planned on ISS, but there's by no means urgency that the 2-alpha array has to be upgraded given the current power config of the vehicle.
And we can return back to the phone bridge now for virtual questions.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mike Wall from space.com. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thank you very much. This is probably for Dr. Polk. This is the first medical evacuation from the ISS, but are there any incidents over the 25-year history of astronauts on the station that you can kind of look to for guidance or to kind of draw up protocols?
Yeah, actually, we've had a host of different things that we have treated on orbit, and fortunately for us, we've had equipment and medications and things to be able to handle all of those, such that we were able to complete the treatment and or the diagnosis on orbit over the last 25 years. And common things occur commonly, right? Folks could have a toothache, folks could have ear pain. There are things that you see commonly on the ground as well over a 6-month period, and in urgent care can happen in space as well. But we are very good at forecasting and having the correct medical equipment and the medications to be able to handle those. And so we've had, although we've had multiple different medical things that we've worked over the last 25 years, all of those have been worked to completion on orbit and without incident.
Next question is from Marina Corin from Freelance Journalist. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, thank you. This question is for Dr. Polk. Could you give us a sense of what the affected crew member will experience over the next couple of days? Have they been told to stop working? How often will they be talking to medical personnel on the ground? And will any of the crew members be asked to provide them with medical support? Thank you.
I couldn't hear that either.
The question was if we are monitoring the crew member, are we restricting any of their activities, such? That's all.
Yeah, I won't really go into a lot of detail on that one because I think that gives maybe too much detail to allude towards a diagnosis or skirts up close to the privacy aspects. Certainly the crew surgeons are monitoring the crew member and they will amend or alter anything that they see fit on the crew member if they need to. But the crew member, again, is absolutely stable. And so, I don't foresee massive changes to the timeline or their activities.
Next question is from Marcia Smith from spacepolicyonline.com. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thanks so much for taking my question. I'm guessing this is probably for Amit. I'm curious, so Chris Williams is going to be the only American up there, and he's going to have the whole U.S. segment to look after. And I'm curious, are there certain experiments or something you're going to have to set aside because he's the only one there? And have the Russians been trained at all on the American segment that they could help him out if necessary?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. There will be some. Of course, a full complement crew can do a lot more work, and so in terms of the amazing research we do on the vehicle, so we will have to adjust the timeline for that single crew operation. But Chris is trained to do every task that we would ask him to do on the vehicle. Of course, we also do a lot of the operations of the vehicle from our various control centers all over the world, including commercial control centers that operate a lot of our research payloads. So he will have thousands of people looking over his shoulder like our crews do all the time to help sure that they continue the groundbreaking science. To your question about the Russian crew members, historically, we had in the past we had trained the Russian crew members to higher levels in terms of their ability to operate uniquely on their own U.S. systems. That's something we used to do in the past, and we kind of put that aside as we swelled the size of the U.S. crew complements. But the Russians that are on board with him, first of all, they've trained tightly together. They're a great team. They work really well together. But they also have qualification to operate the U.S. systems in an advisory mode or an assistant mode, and can, if needed, be called upon with the assistance of MCC Houston or MCC Moscow to assist in any operations.
Next question from Ryan Ketton from NASA spaceflight.com. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thanks very much for doing this, Ryan Caton, NSF. For the administrator, in your opening remarks, you mentioned that you made the decision to bring the crew home early. I was just wondering if you could provide any information as to why you made that decision, of course, if you were able to while remaining anonymous. Thank you.
I'm sorry, did you ask at what point in time that decision was arrived at?
I was just wondering if you could provide any information as to why you made that decision specifically while remaining anonymous.
Generically asking whether we're straight, I think we addressed that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you for that. I think no matter what, at any point or any phase of the expedition, had the situation presented itself, we would arrive at the exact same conclusion. I will say that it certainly made it that much easier and faster when you already have a crew that has done a fantastic job at achieving their on-orbit objectives. You have Crew 12 that's quickly approaching to launch. So I think that made it very easy from our perspective to trade the crew complement on orbit for just a matter of weeks longer versus ensuring that our crew is down here on Earth where they can get the best possible care and treatment if required.
I think we have time for just a couple more questions, so I'll turn it back over to the phone bridge.
Our next question is from Robert Perlman from Collect Space. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thank you. For the administrator and for Dr. Polk, first, because it involves crew members from other countries, was JAXA and Roscosmos, did they need to sign off on the plan to come home early, or were they consulted at all? And for Dr. Polk, you mentioned, or it's been described that the crew member was stable. Was he or she always in a stable condition, or were there any actions needed to be taken aboard the space station, if you could say, without going into detail, that arrived at them being in a stable condition?
So first, with respect to our international partners, I think JAXA held a news conference earlier today where they were able to speak about some of the information we put out. So I think that just speaks to the communication and the sharing of information that's been taking place across what is the International Space Station. So I think they've been, lockstep with us the entire journey. Will continue to be as we evaluate the exact deorbit timeline for the vehicle. And as we consider possibilities as it relates to the Crew 12 mission. And with that, Doctor.
Yeah, I think the administrator covered this earlier, but I won't go into specific details about the medical incident itself, but the crew is highly trained, and they came to the aid of their colleague right away. And that's part of why we do that training, and we do it with every increment.
Next question is from Manuel Mazandis from Exploración Espacial. Go ahead, your line is open.
Thank you so much. Manuel Mazanti from Exploración Espacial. A question for Administrator Isaacman. I wonder if you can provide more details. If this decision was consensual with a crew member that was not feeling well, and now that the decision, that the situation is stable, I don't know if this crew member was insisting on staying. I'm feeling well, I want to stay up to the remaining of the mission, and then unilaterally NASA decided, no, is it better for all of you to come back earlier? Can you provide more details on that decision? Thank you.
So I think, as we mentioned before, obviously this was a serious medical condition. That is why we're pursuing this path. Crew member is stable, as we mentioned. We're not electing an emergency deorbit, but obviously, as we've already communicated, the capability to diagnose and treat this properly does not live on the International Space Station. And I think there's pretty broad agreement across our experts here on the ground, as well as the crew members in space. So I think there's complete alignment around that point.
And we have time for just one more question, so we will toss it to the phone bridge for David's question.
Our last question is from David Curley from Full Throttle. Go ahead, your line's open.
Dr. Polk, I know you're in the middle of an incident. A little early to talk about lessons learned, but we've talked about diagnostics. Have you decided, are there diagnostic tools? Is there something that's coming with AI that might help with this kind of situation in the future? What are you thinking about beyond this incident?
Yeah, that's a great question. As the administrator mentioned before, we're always learning new things with each increment, and that's the value of the International Space Station. And we are looking at AI, we are looking at all tools, and of course, medical hardware, medical technology evolves over the years very rapidly, and of course with AI even more so over the last several years. And so we're looking at all potential technologies, including AI, to augment the crew's health and safety, especially as we get to Moon and Mars. And that'll be the advantage to the Moon as well, as to use it as a test bed for many of these technologies on our way to Mars.
And with that last question, I will turn the floor over to Administrator Isaacman for any closing remarks.
I appreciate everybody responding and being on site and with good questions right now. As I mentioned before, we are exercising the capabilities that we have pioneered over the life of the International Space Station. We have the ability to bring our crew member home under these circumstances in a very planned and controlled way. We have the ability to evaluate Crew 12 and their timeline and look for opportunities to potentially pull that forward if required. The International Space Station, in the way we design our crew complements between the vehicles, is meant for this type of circumstance. That's why we will retain an American crew member to interact with the American segments, and that's also why we fly Russian and international crew members on our vehicles. So this is proceeding exactly as designed. This is how we train for these type of situations routinely. And what you're seeing right now is NASA communicating and being as transparent as we possibly can. And as soon as we have updates as to I think the next big milestones are going to be determining our reentry timeline, we will be the first to share it with you, and we will do the same with respect to our Crew 12 timeline. And thank you.
And that concludes today's briefing. Thank you.